So when I was a little girl, one of my hobbies was learning how to Irish step dance. Yeah, I enjoyed the music and the way it made me feel connected to my maternal family line. And as a little one, I loved having rules to follow. So I really appreciated its very prescriptive instructions on how to do the very intricate footwork. So for those of you who maybe have never seen it, Irish step dancing involves a stiff upper body. Your back is kept straight, your arms are glued to the side, and your hands both make a fist, so that all of the focus is on its fancy footwork. But I have a confession to make. Outside that dance studio, surrounded by no one, all alone in my room, I'd practice. And most of the time, after a few rounds of my Irish jig, my arms and hands would start to do this. They would raise up. It turns out I always wanted to add some hand clapping to my foot stomping, but I didn't dare let myself show that to the outside world. Deep inside, there has always been this erotic guide, a deep embodied desire for that soul-satisfying pleasure. So how is it that I became so mistrustful of my body's own sense wisdom and so afraid of the power of the erotic within me? I recently learned that one of the hypotheses of why Irish step dancing came to be a fixed art form with your arms is because the Catholic Church, which had a strong influence on Irish culture, disapproved of any provocative movement. The restricted posture of the arms made sure that it was one way the church could exert control to prevent anyone from touching and maintaining, quote, modesty. The thing is, no one actually ever had to explicitly teach me that. No one came along and said, little Brigitte, you cannot trust the movement of the erotic guide within. It was just the culture and society I found myself in. So here I am, in search to rehabilitate the sense wisdom of my body, which brought me to the prophetic voice of American writer and womanist Audre Lorde, and she woke me to my senses. In her 1984 essay, Uses of the Erotic as Power, Audre Lorde celebrates the erotic in all of our endeavors as a way to pursue genuine liberatory transformation in our world. For Audre Lorde, eroticism is defined as our body's capacity to feel fully alive and live deeply in our sensory experience. The erotic can be the nurturer of deep spiritual knowledge, and it lives deep inside each of us as this renewable resource, as a source of sensuous experience, the ones that make us feel fully alive. The word erotic comes from the Greek word eros, which is the personification of love in all of its aspects. And while the Greeks had many words for all different kinds of love, in Greek mythology it was Eros, the god of passionate love. But today we live in a patriarchal, racist, ableist, sexist, and heterosexist, homophobic, capitalist society. It's one that has purposefully tried to disconnect us from our passionate love. Our fleshy body selves have become trained to be dulled to our sense wisdom. This is because in order to maintain the oppressive, unjust systems that violently disrespect our body selves and the planetary body of our Earth, we have to be socialized, to become disembodied, to numb and dull our feelings. Many of the embedded theologies that scaffold this oppressive status quo we find ourselves in distorts eroticism as being shame-ridden and even sinful. Societally, we have inherited this life-limiting and death-dealing theology that erotic sensibilities are to be mistrusted and minimized as a lustful form of sexual arousal, one that requires, quote, taming. To live in an anti-erotic society means that we must believe in this big lie, that what is pleasurable for our bodies is somehow wrong. So this got me wondering about our Unitarian Universalist theological charge to center love. For if we are to take this call seriously, to weave love through everything we do, then what role can the erotic play in our faith lives? What would it sound like, feel like, taste like, smell like, look like, to trust Eros, to trust our desire of passionate love, to trust the creative life force of the erotic guide within? The erotic guide leads us through our very first interactions in this world, because it is our very senses that provide the relational grounding for how we move through the world. As infants, we learn about ourselves through touch and through taste. It is our very fleshy, sensuous, highly erotic bodies that are our very sites of revelation. Sites of revelation that affirm all bodies are pleasurable, all bodies are potent gifts of creative energy. Gifts that, when used with integrity, can drive us towards moral action. If only we remember how to resist the dulling of our senses. Our Unitarian Universalist theology is covenantal, and it centers love. Erotic attunement humbly reminds me that we can't think our way into becoming a liberatory faith. We cannot logically, ideologically, or objectively assert collective liberation into being. Instead, beloveds, we must live it. And we can live our way into collective liberation by erotically feeling our way into existence, by waking our senses to feeling fully alive with erotic justice. So how do we reclaim this erotic intelligence, the very ones we need to awaken our senses for collective liberation? I suspect it starts with trusting desire, trusting the sensuousness, trusting the desires of our body. For when we start to trust desire, trusting what feels pleasurable in our skin, we begin to open ourselves up to the power of the erotic that can move us out of hyper-individualism towards mutuality. Eroticism that can remind us that we are radically and sensuously interconnected in interdependence. So lately, I've been experimenting with the ways that eroticism can be a spiritual resource and liberating ethic as a Unitarian Universalist. My search to engage in my senses, to reconnect to that deep inner wisdom, to get that sense of generating full aliveness for justice, led me back to dance class. But this time it was a new kind, a class for ecstatic dance. And ecstatic dance is the complete opposite of Irish step dancing, because its entire purpose is that it's free form, that there is a space for dancers to trust the rhythm and beats of their bodies and follow where it takes you. Ecstatic dance, for me, was one of the invitations to trust the wisdom of my body as a liberating force for self-expression. But I have another confession to make. Inside that dance studio, surrounded by others in its very large room, I found my body doing an Irish jig. There was just something about that fast-paced tempo that transported me back in time, back to the times when I was alone in my room, back to the time when I knew what it felt like to feel genuine in my body, which turns out has a unique style all its own. A style that sort of looks like this mashup between Irish step dancing mixed with some cha-cha. But don't worry, there was tons of foot stomping and also hand clapping and, of course, lots of hip swaying. It turns out that trusting the desire of my body, letting the erotic guide within lead the way towards right relationship with myself and the world, it needed community. A community that we can deliberately co-create for collective liberation, a community like the ones we are in today. My hope and prayer is that in our collective call to center love, that we trust our deepest desires ecstatically and in community. Because in the shared dance of waking our senses to become more alive, we can honor the erotic God guide within, the bringer of pleasure and justice. May it be ecstatically and erotically be so.